Hey, I'm Toad. As I'm sure you can tell by just looking at the character I'm using to talk to you right now, you can probably make a pretty good guess that I'm a Sonic fan. I've been involved in the fan community for at least 2 years now, and it's certainly been something, I guess. But I've been a huge fan of the series long before joining the extensive online fandom. Ever since I started playing Sonic Adventure DX on the GameCube way back in 2008, I've been a huge fan of the series, being with it through its highs and many lows. I think one of the main draws for me with Sonic Adventure was not just the gameplay and whatever this was, but also the story and just how expansive it was. It was the first game in the series to have this huge sense of scale and adventure, with a good blend of both visual and verbal storytelling. Okay, well, mostly just verbal storytelling because, wow, the characters never shut up, but the locations and levels looked amazing, and they always snuck in little details. It really instilled a love for storytelling in me, and it inspired me to try making my own stories. Now, many years later, I have the dream to enter into the art industry so I can try my hand at telling stories on a grander scale. However, I admittedly didn't really know much about the industry itself, not even where to start. On top of that, I didn't know what the workload is like, or how they recruit people, or even if they're accommodating of people with special needs like depression and anxiety. Thankfully, I was able to reach out to freelance artist and animator and Sonic fan, Gigi Dutry, who has lots of experience in the field. She does things, lots of things, like work on the official Sonic the Hedgehog from IDW Publishing, previously did work in animation for the show Archer. She also has her own YouTube channel, Gigi Draws, where she uploads storytime animations, and even runs her own Sonic fan comic, The Murder of Me. It's like Sonic, but murder. I was able to sit down and talk with her about her experiences in the industry, as well as get some tips and advice on how to manage yourself working in the industry, ranging from tips for maintaining your mental wellness to tips how to draw better. She gave some really great insight into how to break into the art industry. They're definitely worth sharing. I started by asking her about her YouTube channel. It was how I originally found out about her, as she would make some really funny animations about her personal life experiences there, which I found to be inspiring. I asked her what was her main motivation behind doing them and if they helped her on her journey into animation, to which she said, quote, "I did them to expand my skill in animations. I wanted to practice storytelling, and one day I want to have my own original series and run it myself and do everything myself. I like to use personal stories as a way to branch off of that and expand my reach along with experimenting." She also stated that using personal experiences for inspiration is a great way to hone your abilities for storytelling, that practicing drawing it out like an episode can really help improve both your visual and verbal storytelling skills, which is vital in the art of animation. Learning about the animation industry sounded very exciting. However, as we spoke further about this industry, not everything is what it cracks up to be. Although there are a lot of positives for being able to work with a team under a company, there are still many prevalent issues that employees deal with on a daily basis, such as not being able to take time off. Gigi used her time at Floyd County Productions as reference. I asked her if the studio was willing to accommodate their employees and understand their possible conditions, but much to my shock, they unfortunately aren't. As, quote, "When I had COVID, I had paid leave, but only for COVID and nothing else. I only had 2 whole sick days outside of COVID and it felt awful. They're also against unions, and studios in general are notorious for problems. It's extremely stress-inducing if you aren't used to that environment. A lot of times in freelance, you don't get the leniency to take days off. A lot of it just falls on you, and that's just the way it is sometimes. You really have to know how to manage and maintain yourself in order to keep afloat in this cutthroat line of work. But despite the constant trials and tribulations, working in animation can be a very rewarding job, and seeing something you helped create come to life and bring joy to others can also bring joy to yourself. I think Gigi's a testament to that, because due to downsizing, she was unfortunately laid off from her position by Floyd County Productions. But she has remained optimistic and stated, quote, "If I was given an animation or freelance commission, I'd still do it, and if a studio offered me a freelance position, I'd still say yes. As long as you just keep moving forward and don't let circumstances bring you down, you'll find new work and start to thrive again." Not everyone's interest lies in the animation industry though. Some people are more intrigued by the comic world. How is the animation industry different from the comic industry? Well, unlike animation, comics are more about shading details and dramatic angles rather than movement fluidity and sound direction. Gigi has worked on T-Mom for the past decade, and she finds working on the comic difficult, but very rewarding. She had these suggestions for newcomers who want to write their own comics. Quote, For someone starting out, don't be too ambitious. Try to just keep it short and experiment a little bit. Also expect a lot of surprises to be thrown your way, as things can get pretty hectic when trying to put together a comic. Mentally prepare yourself to not have things make sense. It was admittedly surprising to hear at first, especially from the person who created one of the most popular fan comics in the Sonic fandom, but it definitely makes sense. You gotta take everything one step at a time in order to prevent getting overwhelmed and struggling with motivation as a result. She even went on to further explain what could cause these motivation issues, saying that, quote, "There's typically a fear of failure or fear of the canvas or just other psychological reasons for me. If I have a lack of motivation, it's usually because there's something I need to resolve in myself first. So it's important to maintain a healthy mentality at all times, as a good mind produces good work. And sometimes it's okay to just step back and take a break from whatever you're doing if you don't feel well to rejuvenate your energy and motivation. Like Gigi says, quote, art in general is a very in-depth mental exercise in self-expression. You need to be mentally okay before you work on anything. There's all kinds of different methods to help pull yourself out of these ruts. Gigi shared with me that when she gets depressed or unmotivated, her method is to, quote, get out of my head, which I do by breathing, getting some tea, and confronting my negative thoughts by reminding myself of my positive accomplishments, which all helps a lot. Granted, what works for her may not work for me and you, just like how what may work for me may not work for her and you, and vice versa. But the notion of clearing your head and not letting your negative mindset spiral into a destructive mentality is universal, and should be the goal that all calming methods should aim to achieve. For a further in-depth discussion about the balance between mental health and motivation for art, as well as more possible methods to help break out of the motivation rut, Gigi recommended the novel Art and Fear, Observations of the Perils and Rewards of Art Making by David Bales and Ted Orland. So how does one go about drawing art pieces? Where does the inspiration come from? According to Gigi, starting with the reference image is always incredibly helpful, but don't be afraid to experiment and take new directions with the drawing. Quote, always look for a reference first, and rather than trying to mimic it, try to see what makes the image work and go from there. She also recommended YouTuber Ethan Becker, a professional artist and animator who frequently uploads tips and tricks for drawing refined art pieces. From my time talking with Gigi, I learned that there's a lot of different paths to taking the art industry and storytelling in general. Maybe you just want to create immersive stories to share with your friends and laugh about it. Maybe you just want to become a storyboard or comic book artist. Or maybe you want to be a fluid animator. Or maybe, just maybe, you're me. A guy who chose to do a rough animation for an English project, which is going above and beyond, might I add, and decided to put everything off until the last minute and just bum rush it with cheap doodles like an absolute clown. But no matter what occupation you want to pursue, the advice she delivered rings true for all of them. Be willing to experiment and try your own things, but also be prepared to persevere through some tough challenges and hardships along the way. It can be a very stressful environment, but if you keep yourself motivated and always focus on moving forward into the next big project, you'll be able to break through the industry and make a name for yourself. And remember above all, that your mental wellness always comes first. A good frame of mind always makes great frames of art.